one of the things about the Trump administration that has been different from a lot of other administrations is it's been this idea of going out, showing all your cards and operating. And so everyone can see what your cards are and then decide where they line up. I think Trump goes into a negotiation holding some back and showing some. And what he wants is people that are going to fall in line and back his play so that he can have like the big reveal or he can turn it when he needs to or whatnot. But I think he judges loyalty and trust and his ability to make the negotiation above everything else. And I think he sees like a Lindsey Graham as someone that, oh, that's easy. I get him in a back room and I say, this is the play and you're going to back it. And he backs it. Whereas with a Massey or a Rand Paul, they've been fighting a particular battle for a very, very long time. They've heard it all said before, and they're going to stick to what they believe. They're going to stick by their word. And so if they buy into what you're saying, okay, they will be good, loyal. In fact, you'll be able to trust them when you can't trust anybody else. But this is what I always tell people. I want a fighter. I want a fighter. Do you? Because what happens when they don't agree with you? You're going to get a fighter.
Right.
And in reality, what most people want is people to just go along with whatever their play is. And look, I think Massey, Paul, and others, they've been fighting this for a long time. They've heard it all before, and they want to know what's actually going to get done. And I will say this. I understand Trump wanting people to back his play and feeling like they should trust him. But I think going after Thomas Massey is a big mistake. And I say this as someone that enthusiastically voted for Donald Trump, that is very, very happy with what's been going on in the short term here, wants him to be successful. But I mean, Massey is not the guy we need to be picking fights with. Massey and Paul and some of these other guys are the people that have been holding the line to ensure the Overton window doesn't shift too far. And to some degree, they're entitled to respect and loyalty. And that's the part that bugs me about this exchange right now, is that stop giving me this either or proposition between what Trump wants or what Massey wants. And let's figure out how to do both. Because I think ultimately what Massey wants is a lot closer to what Trump wants in the end than what Lindsey Graham wants.
Yeah. There's all these lines, tenuous lines that hold Trump 2.0 together. And so you have the Liberty wing, including some actual big L libertarians that came out for Trump. You have there's multiple wings, like the I'll call it the Doge wing, because Elon's not just a tech bro. Elon is his own universe of, and I take his commitment not just to Doge, but reining in the debt. I take that very seriously. Yeah, he's paying a price for doing what he's doing. And then you have the tech bros and the crypto bros, and that's an interesting libertarianish wing too. And then the whole Maha wing, the RFK wing. To hold that coalition together, to reiterate your point, you need to move more towards Rand Paul and Thomas Massey. Because of those concentric circles, the thing that holds that coalition together is small L libertarian. Those are the parts where that very disparate coalition can actually agree on things, and it's the neocons, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, who are the outliers. So yes, you have to manage them, and yes, you need to wrangle them in. And to me, it was remarkable, and I would give most of the credit to Maha. The calls and the social media and the melting of the phones to force squishy Senate Republicans to confirm Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth, like the whole list. I never said this publicly, but privately, I'm like, I don't see how Tulsi and RFK Jr. get through. Yeah, because there's a good third of the Senate Republican caucus that absolutely wanted to vote against them. Yeah. But there was enough grassroots pressure, and Trump's political capital was fresh and strong. Oh yeah. That entire thing needs to be applied to the budget process.
Yeah, Trump has a political capital unlike anything I've ever seen in American history. Right? Like I mean, it's pretty. The thing I think needs to be understood though is that like, again, as someone who is incredibly supportive of Trump, and especially Trump 2.0, right? I was on Twitter today defending Massey. And let me clarify something. Like, I have heard some decent arguments for why they want to run the play they want to run right now with approving the CR and then going around in September starting first.
Yeah, without naming names, sort
Yeah.
of steelman that argument.
So, okay, the steelman argument that I've heard is right now they're dealing with continuing resolution for fiscal year 25. And the idea is that Biden, obviously that was not one that we controlled that entire process. There was a bunch of money put in there that a lot of us don't like. A lot of it was the spending for a lot of it was front loaded. And so you run into legal issues with respect to when Congress has allocated funds, contracts have been awarded, the money has been spent, and you run into these potential legal battles. We kind of already saw this with that 5-4 Supreme Court decision where $2 billion was forced to go out the door. Now, there's a lot of other money still waiting in the wings, and we don't know how much more of it is going to run into legal challenges, but there it is. So the idea is like, look, we're 6 months into this because, the fiscal year started back in September. The idea is get rid of this, just get through it. Seal it off, get through it. And then in September, when we go into fiscal year 26, that is the first clean, Trump budget. And we are promising you that we're going to take all of the various cuts and whatnot that DOJ has identified. We're going to work that into that budget. And then in the meantime, as we're still looking at that, we're going to try to do rescission, which is it's this congressional mechanism where the administration can identify funds that they think are wasteful or not being spent appropriately. And then Congress can essentially, I don't know if a bill is the right term, but they can essentially pull that money back. And now it doesn't get spent out the way we want. So there's this idea that we can still pull some of it back through rescission, that which is eligible for rescission, but just let us get past 25 clean and then move on to 26. The big question I asked was, okay, what guarantees do I have as a very commonly disappointed Republican? What guarantees that I have that you're going to do this? And specifically, what do I need to be looking for to make sure that it's going to happen? And look, I'll give the senator credit. He went through, he's like, okay, if you don't see all the 12 various, what do they call it? The appropriations bills.
Yeah.
If you don't see all 12 of those appropriation bills for 26 out of the Senate by July 31st, we're probably not on track to get this done by September. And I'm like, okay, for better or for worse, you've given me a reason. I might not like all of it, but you've given me a reason. You've given me a strategy. And you've given me a deadline. You've given me something to look toward. And those are some of the things I look for when somebody is asking me to trust them. So again, I'm not saying happy about this. I sure as hell don't think that Massey should be taking all this hell for not being willing to trust it. But that's at least more than I've ever gotten before on explaining what the strategy is. And so now it's going to be a question for individual members of Congress to say, do you trust the Trump administration to hold up their end of the bargain? And that one, I think, is one I'm a little bit more willing to trust. But then, do you trust the House and do you trust the Senate? Because the longer you wait, the closer you get to midterms, and the more dicey this all gets, the more cautious everyone gets. And the Republican tendency has been the way you win midterms is by not making anyone mad. Now, this senator came right in and said, he goes, no, the way we're getting the midterms is by delivering on the promises. Okay. Again, I like what you're saying. But that's the steelman argument for why they got to do this the way that they're currently doing it. Again, it's not my argument, but that's the argument.
Yeah, I mean, if that's true, they're claiming that they are returning to regular order, and we will actually see appropriations committee subcommittees meeting.
Yeah.
And we will see authorizing committees meeting.
Yeah.
And we'll be having hearings about eliminating USAID, and that will be incorporated in the appropriations process. So it's not like we need to wait until, would you say July?
So July is when the bills have to be out,
Yeah.
which means now the Senate obviously has two calendars. The House has one right now because the Senate has both the Senate calendar and the executive calendar because they got to do all these other appointments. So really what I think we need to be watching is how quickly is the House working on their budget. Because the House can get their budget out quicker, and they have to, right? Budget bills ultimately have to originate in the House. So they get that out. Now the Senate gets to look at what the House has done, And they need to be working in conjunction, because the other thing you have to look for is how different are the two budgets. Now, if there was ever a president that I thought could get House leadership and Senate leadership together and say, work this crap out, and I mean lickety split, it's this one. I do believe that he has enough kind of public goodwill, at least within the Republican Party, to be able to push that. And when he does say, I'm going to primary your ass if you don't do it, that carries some weight. It's also why I don't think it should be directed at Massey. So that's where we're at, because at the end of the day, I still think the CR is going to pass. And then the real question will be, okay, what sort of work are they actually doing? I want to see rescission. I want to see budget bills. I want to see stuff passing out of committee. I want to see debates. I want to see the incorporation not only of getting rid of wasteful spending, but what sort of structural changes are you making within the process to ensure more wasteful spending doesn't happen in the future? Because the goal should not be for every year Doge has a new, hundreds of billions of dollars in wasteful spending. It should be, so glad we caught this. How do we not do it anymore?
Right.
And a big part of that too, and this is the part where it's going to get tricky, right? What agencies or departments are you, no kidding, getting rid of? Because the more agencies and departments you have, the more opportunity you will have for fraud, waste, and abuse. So now, when I look at Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, using just that as my guide, I could carve quite a bit of fat off of the federal government. I realize we're not going to get there overnight. That's fine. I'm not asking for everything at once. But I want to see substantive cuts, not just from the budget, but from the actual executive branch. And again, if those bills aren't being carried, well, then I think we're gonna have our answer far before September ever gets here on whether or not they're serious.
And by the way, politically, I think this is do or die for Republicans, and but like they'll in a very opposite way than they'll tell you, because they'll Republican. You were telling me a story earlier, and you can recount this, but your colleagues in the state legislature are constantly telling you that they have to run for re-election, so they can't do the thing they said they were going to do when they won re-election. But the opposite is true here. Like this coalition, I don't think Elon does things that fail. That's not why he's in this. And the conflict, and Massey said this publicly, the conflict between Elon's aspirations and go along, get along budgets, these two things don't fit together.
Yeah.
You're going to have to choose one.
Yep.
So they have kind of a do or die situation where if they don't deliver on this stuff, that political coalition unravels. Because does Elon hang around if they're just fully funding USAID next year too?
Well, and here's the other argument. This is what we've always heard. And again, to some degree, there's an element of truth to this, right? You get told, well, we can't get what you want done because we don't have the Senate. We can't get what you want done because you don't have the House. We can't get what you want done because we don't have the presidency. Why are you going to carry controversial bills that could impact the election if they have no chance of passing anyways? Let's for a moment concede all those points. What's your excuse now? You got the House, you got the Senate, you got the presidency, and you've got arguably the most friendly Supreme Court you've had in generations. So now if you don't do it, now if you tell me I have to wait for the midterms, I think the American people are at a point right now where it's like, screw you, man.
Yeah.
I'm just done. Screw you. If you're not willing to do it, we'll get somebody that will. And here's the other thing, two things I'd like to say on this. Whenever I have somebody come to me and say, Nick, you've been in office for 10 years. I'm interested in running. Before we get to anything about policy or fundraising or what do you got to do to run a campaign, my question is, what are you willing to lose your seat over? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, what vote do you know is the right course of action? What vote could you cast that will get the thing that you want, the policy that you want, but it costs you your seat? You're done. I said, and before you answer, I want you to think about it after you've knocked 5,000 doors yourself and you've had to spend days upon days raising money when you didn't want to, and you've gone through all these hard fights, and you're finally there, and you finally got the position, and everyone around you is telling you, well, you can't get anything good done if you can't get reelected, but now you have the opportunity, you're going to vote, what do you do? And half the time they'll sit there stunned, and I'll be like, you're not ready. Because if you don't know what you're willing to lose your seat over, the answer is nothing. You will lose your seat over nothing. You will always find a reason why you had to compromise, why you couldn't do it this time, but you'll do it next time. We're at a point right now where I think people are fed up with that. This is your moment. You can prove it. But here's the other good part about this. I honestly believe we're at a point where even when it seems controversial, even when the media is trashing it, I cannot believe the number of people that I have seen that were not big Trump fans that have said, you know what? At least this guy does what he said he was going to do. I think we're in that era right now. I think all the conventional political wisdom about just keep your base and don't piss off, don't galvanize your opponents, I think they're already galvanized. So this is a question about how many people see you as the sort of person that did what you said you were going to do. And if you're that person, you get the benefit of the doubt with the great undecided in every election. But if you don't, you're gone. You're just another empty suit.
Thank you for watching Kibbe on Liberty. You can watch new episodes every Wednesday anywhere that you consume podcasts, on YouTube, on Apple, on Spotify, whatever. Watch, click, like, check it out.